All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Public Safety and Government Operations Committee meeting. In attendance today, we've got myself, Mark Conway, Chair of the committee, representing the 4th District, Councilman Burnett, representing the 8th District, Councilman Cohen, representing the 1st District, and Councilwoman Ramos, representing the 14th District. Representing the Office of the President, I've got, I don't think we have anybody here today. And representing the Mayor's Office, I've got Sophia. Thank you, Sophia. This afternoon, the committee will have a hearing on Council Resolution 23-0385, Study and Report, Baltimore City Climate Resilience Authority, for the purpose of requiring the Director of Finance, the City Solicitor, the Director of Transportation, the Director of Public Works, the Director of Planning, and the Director of Sustainability to submit a report detailing how Baltimore City may establish a local climate resilience authority originally authorized by Chapter 236 of the Acts of 2020, now codified as Title 22, Resilience Infrastructure of the State Local Government Article. This bill was sponsored by myself, Councilman Conway, and we had a hearing. This is going to just be the second hearing on this, and we will vote this out today. Very simply, this bill establishes a resilience authority, or excuse me, sets out to help us understand if we did establish a resilience authority, what it might look like and the different structures for that authority, given the things that we want to accomplish with it. The goal is for this study to be completed within 6 months so that we could hopefully get this done by the end of our terms, looking at my colleagues here. We have a few amendments. Most of them are technical. They are on your desk. I'll very quickly walk through those amendments. Amendments 1 and 2 are technical, as I stated. Amendment number 3 is factoring current efforts by the city, including sustainability plan, the climate action plan, the disaster preparedness and planning project, the nuisance flooding plan, and other climate-related plans being considered by the city. Amendment number 4 is very similar to 3, just making sure that we're taking in what's going on more broader across the city into consideration as we think about the structure of this resilience authority. Amendment number 5 is technical. So that's the long and short of where we are. I'm going to open the floor to my colleagues if you've guys got any questions about the bill or the amendments as structured. Go ahead, Councilwoman Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 2 questions. One is, I don't know that we need to change this, but I just want to make sure that's in folks' minds. The nuisance flood plan right now only looks at coastal flooding and not inland flooding. And the work that my colleague and I have been doing is really around that inland flooding. There's a fancy name for it that I'm not going to use. And so just to keep in mind that the pluvial flooding, the inland flooding has to be considered here. And my colleague and I will have an initiative about that as well, but just to make sure it's still in people's minds. So the nuisance flood plan does reference that we have to address inland flooding, but there isn't that strategy yet. So I just want to make sure that folks are keeping it in mind as we go forward.
Excellent point. And I guess that's a question that I would have for sustainability.
Sustainability.
We'll go into reports from the agencies given the amendments, but I'll pitch it off to sustainability. If there's anything we know about inland flooding, you should turn on the mic.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Amy Gilder-Busati, Sustainability Manager with the Office of Sustainability, standing in for Ava Richardson. So first I'll address the question related to urban flooding or pluvial flooding. I believe that the DP3 update will include that and that there is mapping going on related to that. And so if the DP3 is kind of one of the plans cited in the bill, that does call for addressing and planning for pluvial flooding. Does that answer the question?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen the mapping and the data. It's amazing. Thank you. Okay, so we'll just include it in there. I wasn't thinking that we needed to add an amendment, I just wanted to make sure we were
Yes,
considering it.
it's included in the
so,
DP3.
uh-huh. And, Mr. Chair, my second question is based on what was testimony from the administration last hearing about the timeline. You know, there's a concern that 6 months is not enough time. And so mostly, I think, the concern was not just about these plans, but like procurement and, you know, that kind of thing. So I think making sure that from the committee's perspective, we know that this is, and the administration knows that this is urgent, is important. But just trying to figure out what to do about that timeline in terms of, do we go ahead and amend this? Do we just monitor the situation if they go over the timeline? What is your thinking about that?
Yeah, I think a couple of things go into consideration with keeping the 6-month timeline and not adopting the 1-year timeline. We talked about this a little bit in the last hearing. There are two things that immediately come to mind. So one, if we push it to a 1-year timeline, it doesn't give us time within this current council to actually institute a resilience authority. It would just be way too close to elections and otherwise. And, you know, if we want to get this done, getting the work done is not the study. Getting the work done is actually establishing the authority so that it could actually begin doing projects. And the hope is that we could figure out from the study what that might be and then be able to actually go through the legislative process to do it. That said, I think 6 months is certainly tight. I don't doubt that for a second. This is something that we've been in conversations with the Office of Sustainability in for a year and a half now. These are not new conversations. So, you know, I think ultimately we just decided that either we're going to do this or we're not going to do it, and a study would help us figure out if we were going to do it, what would make the most sense in making that decision. The other consideration is going to be around structure, of course, particularly around whether or not we want to do a joint authority with the county. That's a big question for which we as a council cannot, you know, we do not negotiate with, you know, counties or otherwise. That is a decision of the administration. And if the administration is going to seriously weigh that consideration, they want to be able to do so in an amount of time that would at least roughly match up with the county's timeline. Right now, the county is slated to finish their study in October. If we were to pass this bill, you know, second reader, third reader, so on and so forth, signed by the mayor, at best, we'd be looking at sometime in January, finishing our report with a 6-month timeline. If we added an additional 6 months, we'd be looking at, you know, maybe sometime this year in 2024, that we would actually be able to introduce a bill with the recommendations of this study. So from a pure practicality standpoint, adding the additional 6 months doesn't quite fit the bill. I think what we can do is continue to work with sustainability, monitor the situation, and really make sure that sustainability knows this is urgent. They are pushing for exactly these issues all the time. You know, just making sure that we're staying on top of it with them and being as helpful as possible.
The timeline, however, is we don't meet again until August to do a second and third reader, let's say,
Right.
if we double read it. So the timeline is actually March for that. So, I mean, unless the administration is committed to just starting now, since we're about to pass it, you know, to get the things in order in terms of if there's going to be a consultant, how that ends up working. Because I think what we were mostly afraid of, what they seem to be afraid of, is the timeline to get a consultant, if there needs to be one.
Yeah, I would hope, and that's a conversation we can certainly have with sustainability, noting that they're looking at getting a contractor to do this. It was in their bill report that they would start as soon as they had an indication that it was the intention of the council to move this bill. So, and we'll find out today whether or not it's the intention of the council to move the bill.
Yeah, I guess I'm just curious what that means, if it's on second read. Well, it doesn't matter. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Any other questions? I'll turn it over to bill reports, starting first with the city solicitor's office.
Can you repeat, sorry?
Given the amendments, does the Solicitor's Office stand by the amendments and their legal sufficiency?
This, the law department? Is that the
If
question?
you could,
Sorry.
yes, the Law Department, yes.
Yeah, thank you. This is Sophia from the Mayor's Office of Government Relations. The law department stands by your support and approves the amendment for form and legal sufficiency. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up, we've got the Department of Finance. You're, gotta turn it on.
There we go. Sorry. For the Department of Finance, these amendments wouldn't change our position. We stand by our report, which is that we do not oppose the legislation.
Thank you. Next, we've got the Department of Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Marcia Collins and Janelle Mumma here representing Department of Public Works. We expressed our concerns about the time and at the original hearing. We remain concerned that 6 months is going to be really tight. And I'm not sure you can get a consultant within 6 months, but that's another issue. So we're still concerned about the timing, but we appreciate that a number of the amendments, if not all, other than the extension of time that sustainability offered, this committee is considering, so we appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, the Department of Planning and / Sustainability.
Amy Gilder Basati, Sustainability Manager, Office of Sustainability. Agreeing with Marcia that we appreciate that the amendments offered by the Office of Sustainability have been, for the most part, incorporated, and we still have our concerns related to the timeline, and understand as far as if a full year would not be an appropriate timeline given the goals of the council, but any additional timeline available is also appreciated for navigating the process of getting the study done.
Thank you. We had the Environmental Control Board here.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. The Environmental Board have no comment on this bill. Thanks.
And finally, the Department of Transportation.
How are you doing, Mr. Chair, members of the committee? James Turner, representing the Department of Transportation. We stand by our original bill report of no objection. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of the agencies from my colleagues? Seeing none, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to move the suite of amendments 1 through 6, 1 through 5.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ramos, seconded by Burnett. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? The amendments have been accepted. I'll entertain a motion to move the bill as amended.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Conway, yes. Ramos?
Yes.
Burnett?
Yes.
And Cohen?
Yes.
The bill is passed, and we'll move on to second reader at our next council meeting. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you, and I know for sustainability and trying to get this done as quickly as possible, I think we will try to be creative in what that may look like, and I would wonder if there is potentially an opportunity to work alongside the county in their contract. I don't know if that is possible, given the timeline and how far they've moved, but certainly what's coming out of their study would, of course, be very similar or inform what we might consider as a city. So I would encourage you guys to look at that as well. With that, this hearing is adjourned, and I appreciate you guys' time today. Thank you.